In my recent thumbnail test, I see that you all prefer to be devils instead of gods. I see how you are. Today I'm going to be talking about the new Animist class that comes out in the new War of Immortals book for Pathfinder 2e. This continues my series of videos covering the book, where I started covering the new mythic rules. Support my Patreon to get early access to all of these videos. This is one of the two new classes. It is a divine spellcaster that gets their power from the fact that they can be an intermediary between this world, the material world, and the spirits that inhabit the material world and are not physical. This class is a doozy, and it's definitely in the top tier of classes that I would say are the most complicated to play in Pathfinder, though it seems like a lot of fun. Maybe the most complicated class. I think the Kineticist took more pages and has more options, but I think the Animist has the most decisions you make in play. But with that comes a lot of versatility, which will attract players. It definitely overtakes the Wizard's reputation as being a class that makes you make a lot of decisions in the morning. I will do a brief combat demonstration to help illustrate how this class plays. First, an introduction. I am Ronald, the Rules Lawyer. I am a lawyer who runs tabletop role-playing games. My preferred system is Pathfinder 2e. For 7 years, I ran an after-school, middle-school RPG class. Support my Patreon if you haven't already. It allows me to continue making these videos. I don't make money as an attorney. For info on why, look at the video whose thumbnail is on the screen. Supporting my Patreon gives you ad-free early access to most of my videos and exclusive content. Alright, what is an animist? You are a medium between the physical world and the spirits. And spirits don't necessarily have to be once living beings. It could be spirits that are created by the force of a raging river, or the violence of a field where a great battle took place. You are a divine spellcaster, so you access the spell list traditionally associated with clerics. First of several additions from Future Ronald here, your spells that you get from your apparitions that I'm about to talk about, many of them are non-divine spells, so give you access to a wider variety of spells. You are both a prepared spellcaster, where you have to predict each spellcasting that you will use that day, and some of your spellcasting is spontaneous spellcasting as well, where you expend spell slots to cast spells from a menu of spells. The first spells are called your Animist spells. The second spells are derived from your apparitions and are called your apparition spells. Additionally, apparitions give you a focus spell that you can cast repeatedly throughout the day using your focus point pool. There are 4 subclasses to the Animist that I'll cover, but all Animists have access to all 11 apparitions that are in this book. And those apparitions determine what your apparition spells are for that day. Alright, so let's look at the first page, and we'll see that you are very middle of the road. It's quite similar to what a cleric would have, who also takes the subclass that gets medium armor proficiency. Key attribute is wisdom, 8 hit points per level. Expert in will saves, trained in religion and either nature or occultism, plus 2 skills plus your intelligence modifier. Trained in simple weapons. Now let's go to the class features. As I said, you are both a prepared and a spontaneous spellcaster. Here on this chart that shows you your spells per level, each entry has a plus sign. All of your prepared slots are to the left, and all of your spontaneous slots are to the right. So at level 1, you're able to prepare, in the morning, 2 cantrips from the divine spell list, and 1 first rank spell. Additionally, you get to choose 2 apparitions that determine the rest of your spell list for that day. So let's look how that works. You choose 2 apparitions from the list of 11. Each apparition gives you proficiency in 2 lore skills and a repertoire of additional spells that you can cast using your apparition spell slots. And at level 1, you only have 1 first rank spell slot and 2 cantrip spell slots. All of your cantrips, of course, you can cast at will. Notably, these apparition spells are always signature spells for you. Once you get higher rank spell slots, you can heighten these spells to any rank you have a spell slot for. Additionally, of your 2 apparitions, you choose which one is your primary one, and that is the one that gives you your focus spell, which is called a vessel spell. You are able to change your vessel spell by refocusing for 10 minutes, changing your primary apparition to the other one. Note that it says when you refocus. That means you can simultaneously recharge your focus point pool and change your primary apparition. So let's illustrate this with an example at level 1. Of your Animist spells, you get to prepare 2 cantrips and 1 first-rank spell. Our Animist will prepare Divine Lance and Light as their cantrips, and the Heal spell as their first-rank spell. Additionally, they get to choose from the 11 apparitions, and they're going to choose first Custodian of Groves and Gardens, which emphasizes healing and protection. Our Animist gets Farming Lore and Herbalism Lore as skills for today, and also adds the listed spells to their repertoire of apparition spells for the day, namely the cantrip Tanglevine and the first-rank spell Protector Tree. Our Animist then chooses a second apparition, which is Steward of Stone and Fire. This one is tuned, obviously, to Earth and Fire, and has an emphasis on attacking foes. Our Animist picks up Mountain Lore and Volcano Lore, and also adds to the repertoire the cantrip Ignition and the first-rank spell Interposing Earth. Despite having 2 first-rank spells in this repertoire, they only have 1 spell slot to cast them with. Their Heal spell, meanwhile, will be expended when it's cast, and all of these cantrips can be cast without limit. But the Animist is not done. They still need to decide which of these 2 will be their primary apparition, which determines their focus spell or vessel spell. They can choose between Garden of Healing or Earth's Bile. This Animist wants to focus on healing, and so chooses the Custodian of Groves and Gardens. Garden of Healing is now their focus spell. Every time they refocus, they can change it to the other one if they so choose. As you can see, their spell slots are comparable to those of other spellcasting classes, but the name of the game is versatility here for the Animist. That is their strength. By the way, there's an important rule I'll say now about focus spells. Because they involve your apparition, there's a rule preventing you from casting or sustaining the same focus spell twice within the same round. Alright, what are the other class features? First, they have an Animistic practice. This is their subclass. We'll look at these after the combat demo. We'll also look at the 11 apparitions after the demo. Advancement for Animists is like for other spellcasters. You become an expert in your spellcasting at 7th level, and become a master at 15th level, and legendary at 19th level. However, for the Animist, they get an extra benefit at these times. At 7th level, they get a 3rd apparition that they can attune to in their morning preparations. Also, their focus point pool increases by 1. At 15th level, when they become master, they get a 4th apparition that they can attune to, and their focus points maxes out at 3. At 19th level, they get a 10th rank apparition spell slot, which can be used to cast the Avatar spell, which basically allows your primary apparition to inhabit you. Also notable, hidden in the chart, is that you have a notable increase in the number of spell slots you get at level 10. You jump from having 5 to 8 apparition spell slots. There's also hidden another choice that you need to make in the morning. There's a set of feats that you can get at level 6, and also at level 12 and level 16, that have the Wandering trait. These are feats that you can change every morning for another feat with the same trait. They represent apparitions that you can choose to align with for this given day. So this is yet another choice, or a set of choices you make at higher levels, that you need to make when you're an Animist. So Animists are very flexible. For example, if the fighter is not there today, maybe you want to change your apparition and your wandering feats to support you being a weapon fighter. Or if the cleric can't join the group today, to support your healing. Changing your apparitions from this list of 11 changes your spell list, and what focus spells you can choose from for the day. Given the relative complexity of this class, I thought it would be important at this time to do a short combat demonstration. We're now going to do a short combat demonstration to show what it's like to be an Animist in action. Lenore and Ferngrove are 2 Animists, and they're part of a larger adventuring party. However, 2 members of the party have been kidnapped by hobgoblins. These 2 are used to being in the back lines. Their fighter is one of the kidnapped people. Lenore has the Seer subclass, and so can sense apparitions, and has a dead spirit speak through her, and with that information from that spirit, they find out where the hobgoblins have taken them. Since they have to rely only on each other, they're taking different apparitions today to complement each other. Lenore will be focused on dealing damage to enemies. She has a good strength score, so she's going to attune to the Witness of Ancient Battles and wield a Gizarm. a two-handed reach weapon. She also will attune to the Steward of Stone and Fire, in case they need to blast large groups of foes. She prepares these spells. They both prepare some heal spells to be able to heal each other, and she does not prepare any attack spells because her weapon fighting vessel spell gives her a -2 penalty to those spells. Her two apparitions also give her these apparition spells that she can cast spontaneously. Ferngrove chooses to play more of a support role today. He will attune to the Custodian of Groves and Gardens to provide healing and support, and the Imposter in Hidden Places, the Creeping Whispering Apparition. These are his spells for the day that he has prepared. His spells include some direct attack spells, and these are the apparition spells that his apparitions give him. He gets to cast all these spells at all of these ranks using these 3 spell slots. They're in a hallway and encounter a group of hobgoblins that confront them. Future Ronald here, adding that they are level 5 animists facing level 1 hobgoblin soldiers and a level 4 surprise foe. They all take out their weapons, and Ferngrove tells them they better back away or they will regret it. Lenore has taken the level 2 animist feat Conceal Spell. This gives any spell she casts the subtle trait. She gets to cast a spell secretly, and she does this now with her vessel spell, Embodiment of Battle. The hobgoblins give a battle cry, starting the combat. Unbeknownst to them, there is a hobgoblin archer hiding down here behind a pillar. Lenore is unaware of this oncoming attack, and so she is off guard. The hobgoblin fires its crossbow and hits. And with its precision damage, it deals 12 piercing damage to her. The archer had spent an action to lean out. With its last action, it reloads. Alright, the soldier opens by raising its shield and charging forward in this direction. Lenore is able to do a reactive strike right now because of her vessel spell. The spell gives her martial weapon proficiency and also the reactive strike reaction that fighters get that lets her make a strike against foes who leave a square and when they do other things. She has this reach weapon, and it additionally gives her a +1 to attack and damage. She swings, and by the way, there's a lot of extra stuff in Foundry here because I'm using the playtest data module, which is outdated. She attacks and misses. The soldier continues its charge and is going to attack Lenore. And that's a hit for 6 damage. Next is Ferngrove. His primary apparition right now is the Custodian of Gardens, and his vessel spell is the one that heals creatures in an emanation. He doesn't want to use that right now. However, he has the level 1 feat Circle of Spirits, which gives him an extra focus point and lets him spend an action to change his primary apparition to another. And he's going to do that right now. He changes it to the Imposter in Hidden Places. Next thing he does is cast his vessel spell, Discomfiting Whispers. That will stymie creatures who start their turn next to him. Ferngrove is still playing a support role, but in a different way than he originally planned. Future Ronald, I want to add that he makes sure that he is not standing next to his ally, because it can debuff his ally too. Note that the Hobgoblin has the reactive strike reaction. However, this vessel spell, like all the vessel spells I believe, does not have either the concentrate or manipulate trait, so it does not provoke reactions. Ferngrove then attacks the soldier with his dagger, and that hits for 4 damage, which the soldier blocks most of with its shield. That used its reaction. Next is Lenore. Lenore considers delaying and waiting for more of the hobgoblins to come up to her. However, delaying ends any sustained beneficial effects that she has, ending her vessel spell, so she writes that off. One of her apparitions gives her the Fireball spell in her repertoire. She considers that also, but she wants to save her spell slots, and also it has a -2 status penalty to its DC because of her Embodiment of Battle vessel spell, so she sustains that spell as her first action. She could cast Sure Strike right now. It's one of the apparition spells from her battle apparition. Costs 1 action and lets her roll an attack roll twice and use the better result. But she has another idea. What she's going to do is make a basic strike against this soldier. It's a hit, 15 damage, and with her second action, she has the Assurance skill feat, which allows her to do an athletics check without rolling, and she's going to try to trip the hobgoblin. Her automatic result is 17, which is enough to make it fall prone. If it tries to stand, she can whomp it with reactive strike at full accuracy. Hobgoblin Soldier number 2, it raises its shield and charges towards Lenore. Lenore withholds a reactive strike. She wants to save a reaction for this one on the ground. This soldier then swings, and that's a miss. The third soldier raises its shield and charges towards Ferngrove. Lenore can reach here also, by the way, because she has a reach weapon, but she demurs. Okay, here's the strike. Oh, and that is a critical hit. Ooh, doing maximum damage, 22. Ouch. Next is the archer. First, it uses the hide action to make its enemies off guard, and that succeeds against Lenore. It leans out and then fires the crossbow. Oh, okay, that's a critical hit with precision damage, 20 damage to Lenore. Next, this Hobgoblin Soldier first needs to save against the Discomfiting Whispers because it's starting its turn next to Ferngrove. So it makes a will saving throw against his spell DC, which is 21. Alright, that succeeds. Then it raises its shield to get ready to stand up, and here Lenore responds with her reactive strike powered by her vessel spell. And that is a critical hit. Probably going to kill the Hobgoblin, and 32 damage does. Now it's Ferngrove. He has prepared the Spiritual Armament spell, which allows him to attack a foe up to 120 feet away, like this archer, with a ghostly weapon that he can then sustain. He also has this spell-shaped feat, formerly called Metamagic feat, that lets him modify a spell by spending an action right before it to extend its reach by 30 feet, and additionally, it can drag an enemy towards him 30 feet. However, doing that combination would cost 3 actions and make him lose his Discomfiting Whispers spell. It would expire at the end of his turn because he doesn't sustain it. It wouldn't be the end of the world, he has a second focus point, but he wants to avoid that. So what he does instead is he sustains Discomfiting Whispers. He considers moving into this spot right here to try to impose its effect on both Hobgoblins. However, he is concerned about both of them being at relatively low health right now. So what he's going to do instead is cast one of his spells from his apparitions, Protector Tree from the Garden Apparition. This creates a protective tree that absorbs damage when he or one of his allies takes damage and is standing next to it. It shields the person. He's going to cast it at second rank because, remember, all apparition spells are signature spells. He can choose which rank to cast it at. He's going to place it right here, or at least he wants to, because this does provoke a reactive strike from this Hobgoblin. We'll see what happens. That's a miss. So he succeeds at positioning a Protector Tree here. That costs the rest of his actions. Next is Lenore. She sustains her battle spell. Then she attacks this soldier in front of her ally. That's a miss, due to the raised shield. She will use Assurance to trip this person, since she's fairly certain it will work, and it does. This soldier on the left raises its shield, and then attacks Lenora with the longsword. That's another hit. 9 damage. Second strike is a miss. This soldier here opens its turn making a saving throw against the Discomfiting Whispers, and fails, so his next attack has a big debuff. He raises his shield, and then tries to stand up, and this provokes the reactive strike from Lenore. That's a hit, just short of a crit, prevented by the shield. 16 damage. The soldier is going to decline to shield block. It takes the full damage, and now will try to attack Ferngrove. However, he has to roll twice and use the lower result. Okay, here we go. Let's see what happens. And that is a miss. And now Discomfiting Whispers, because he missed on this debuffed attack, will now inflict void damage on him. It does 1d6 void damage. Correction, 2d6 void damage because they are level 5. Without a saving throw. And that does 5 damage and kills the Hobgoblin. The Hobgoblin's own, the vessel spell causes death. The archer reloads and fires at Lenore. And hits again, doing 10 damage to the tree. The tree takes this damage instead of Lenore. It loses half of its health. Ferngrove decides he does not need his vessel spell active anymore, so he's going to spend all 3 actions to power up his Spiritual Armament spell now. He uses Grasping Spirits on his Spiritual Armament spell. It did not need the range boost. However, he does want to pull the archer out of cover. Okay, that hits. Whoa, 16 damage, and it needs to make a fortitude save against a spell DC. Needs to beat a 21 and fails. So gets dragged out 30 feet towards the party. Lenore now approaches the archer. Reactive strike from this hobgoblin be damned, which misses, and tries to trip the archer. I failed to mention earlier that the Gizarm is a two-handed weapon, and normally you need a free hand to do athletics maneuvers like trip. However, Gizarm has the trip trait, so she's able to perform the maneuver with the weapon itself. If she succeeds, then this archer will be prone and kind of pinned down because Lenore has a reactive strike, because her last action is going to be to sustain her vessel spell. So that's our little glimpse of how the Animist works in combat. Alright, so that's the Animist in action. I'm going to save some observations for the end of the video in my final thoughts. So let's look at the subclasses and the apparitions and the feats for the Animist now. Your subclass is your Animistic practice. Each gives you a boon at level 1, then level 9, then level 17. The liturgist draws forth their apparitions through song and dance. At level 1, you gain the first level class feat, Circle of Spirits. This is quite a good feat that I think a lot of animists will take. Once per round, you can spend an action to change what your primary apparition is, letting you change your vessel spell mid-combat. Also, it adds a focus point to your pool. As we saw in the combat, all vessel spells need to be sustained, and this constrains your freedom turn to turn. Having the ability to recast your vessel spell frees things up for you. At level 9, you can sustain an apparition spell and simultaneously leap, step, or tumble through, which is kind of funny to me. To move farther, you want to try to move through enemies, conveying the idea of dancing. Level 17, you get to change your primary apparition as a free action when you roll initiative. You can also open combat with a cantrip from that apparition, and it costs one less action. The next practice is the medium. The flavor text says that you're able to associate more freely with a wide array of apparitions and are less able to bond with a specific one, which clashes flavor-wise with the first feat, the bonus feat that you get at first level, called Relinquish Control. This has the requirement that there must be one apparition you always attune to every morning. But this is a free action when your turn begins, and it gives you a huge bonus against effects that would control you. You also get a +2 circumstance bonus, recalling knowledge, with the lores you have from your attuned apparitions. However, this also severely restricts what actions you can do being in this state, which only lasts until the start of your next turn, mind you. It must be to recall knowledge, step, strike, cast an apparition spell, cast a vessel spell, sustain a vessel spell, or use an action that has the apparition trait. So that rules out spells from your prepared spell list. You cannot stride. Your movement's kind of limited to stepping. Thankfully, this only lasts until the start of your next turn. At level 9, you get to have 2 primary apparitions at once, and you get an extra focus point. The maximum of 3 still applies, of course. Level 17 gives you additional benefits when you relinquish control. Recalling knowledge once as a free action, bonus spirit damage, and resistance to all physical damage, but with weakness to spirit damage. The next practice is the Seer. You are particularly attuned to detecting spirits and the undead. At first level, you have Invocation of Sight and get the Apparition Sense feat, which lets you automatically pinpoint spirits, haunts, and undead within 30 feet of you. You also are able to let the spirits speak through you. You're also able to restore a disembodied soul to a still living body, including when it is possessed. Additionally, the subclass gives you a bonus to defenses against spirits and incorporeal undead. That bonus increases at each of these next steps from +1 to +2 to +3. At 9th level, you get resistance to spirit damage and void damage. At 17th level, your apparition sight becomes a precise sense. You can see them as well. And I assume flavor-wise, you can see the apparitions that you're attuned to as well. The last practice is the Shaman. You're able to give physical form to your apparitions. How this is expressed is basically you have a familiar that follows the familiar rules. You get these feats for free at level 1 and 9. At 17th level, your familiar can, for 1 minute, become incorporeal and get a lot of the resistances and features of the incorporeal. However, it cannot move through walls because it must maintain line of effect with you. Alright, so let's get to the apparitions. The first is the Crafter in the Vault. They are found in dungeons and forges and other places of creation. You get everything listed here. Every apparition gives you 2 lore skills, contributes spells to your repertoire, and can give you a vessel spell if that you make them your primary apparition. They also give you a form that you can take when at 19th level you're able to cast Avatar. This one's hilarious. You get to be an incarnate dungeon that attacks people with traps, dungeon traps, and deadly darts. And you can burrow as well, or be a flying dungeon. I think this is a tribute to the dungeon ancestry that Battlezoo released. It's the one that lets you have the party quest inside you. Now, their vessel spell is interesting. It is called Traveling Workshop. It basically gives you the crafting and thievery skills and the tools you need to do crafting and thievery. So I suppose you can do this in exploration mode when you need to do these things in a jiffy, like picking a lock or disabling a trap. Also, you sometimes need to disable device in the middle of a combat. Or with certain feats, repair something like a shield or a construct's companion really quickly. There's an alternate use of it, which is for 8 hours you could do the crafting activity. However, it is limited to crafting things for yourself. You cannot give the items to other people. And if you don't know Pathfinder, you still have to pay the cost of crafting items and spend additional days to lower that cost. When you're a 5th level animist, you can be expert in these skills. Next is the Custodian of Groves and Gardens. Its vessel spell is Garden of Healing. You get to heal all creatures 1d4 hit points. The scales up, of course, as you level up. It does so every turn that you sustain it. I need to insert here that every vessel spell costs 1 action to cast, and that you need to sustain it with an action every subsequent turn. The only exception being the downtime crafting spell that we just talked about. Notably, if you have to give up on sustaining Garden of Healing, you cannot benefit creatures who have already healed from it with more healing until 10 minutes have passed. Next is the Echo of Lost Moments. This involves apparitions that have to deal with lost memories. And we also have manipulation of time and thoughts. Their vessel spell is called Store Time. When you cast it, you gain a bonus reaction that you can use for any animist or apparition reaction that you have. Now, this one I'm not sure about because I couldn't find many reactions that are animist or apparition reactions here, unless I missed something. The lowest level feats were level 6. There's another vessel spell that you can cast as a reaction. However, that requires being able to cast 2 different vessel spells, which is limited to a subclass that we saw earlier that doesn't get that ability until level 9. So I'm not sure what this benefit is, at least until you get to higher level. Next is the Imposter in Hidden Places. These are apparitions that deal with secrets and creepy whispering. Indeed, their vessel spell is called Discomfiting Whispers. You create a 5-foot emanation, and each creature, that includes allies and enemies, that starts their turn within 5 feet of you must do a will save or have misfortune on their next attack roll. They have to roll the attack 2 times and use the lower result. A creature so affected, if they fail on that strike, takes 1d6 void damage. This increases as you level up. Next is Lurker in Devouring Dark. Think Cthulhu and Oceans. They have Devouring Dark form, where you get tentacles that have 10-foot reach that you can attack with. Also, every time you sustain it, you can simultaneously do a grapple check with reach. Grapple with reach is quite good. Starting at 3rd level, you can instead turn into a shark, and at 9th level, you can instead turn into a water elemental. Naturally, as your focus spell auto-heightens, your transformation can also increase in power too. Note that these shape-changing spells normally take 2 actions, but this reduces the cost to 1 action. However, you still need to sustain the spell in subsequent turns. But these let you attack in your form for free while sustaining. Next is Monarch of the Fey Courts. This is the Fey apparition. Your vessel spell is Nymph's Grace. You're just so beautiful. Every enemy within 10 feet must do a will save or be confused by your beauty. That's a condition that makes you attack random creatures, and they can never attack you because you're just too fine. Note that damage to them gives them a chance to shake off the confused condition. Otherwise, you'd be able to beat them up because you're so beautiful and they couldn't retaliate, and that would be fucked up. Next is the Reveler in Lost Glee. These are malicious trickster apparitions. And your vessel spell is called Trickster's Mirrors. This is reminiscent of the classic mirror image spell. You get to create multiples of you that can confuse enemies. They, instead of hitting you, break one of your images. This instead creates mirrors. And if they are adjacent to you, they take mental damage as they believe they are showered by glass. There are other differences, however. You only create one mirror instead of 3 immediately, and every time you sustain it, you get to add another image. Still, as with mirror image, a attack that is a regular failure against you, but not a critical failure, automatically destroys one of your mirrors. Also, additionally, any damaging effect that affects all targets within your space, such as an area spell, destroys all of the mirrors automatically. Now, this all kind of sounds like it sucks. However, unlike mirror image, you create a new image every turn so long as you sustain this. You can create a total, theoretically, of 10 mirrors over a long battle with this spell. Next is the Stalker in Darkened Boughs. This is nature that hates you. And there's also a good deal of shape changing here as well. Your vessel spell is Darkened Forest Form. You get to cast the Pest Form spell, which lets you turn into a tiny creature. Interestingly, every time you sustain it, you can choose to be a different shape, which can confuse others. The forms available to you increase as you level up. You get the Animal Form spell when you get to 3rd level, and at 9th level, you get access to Elemental Form. There are Animist feats, by the way, that unlock other forms when you use this vessel spell or use the Cthulhu vessel spell, and those include flying forms. Next is the Steward of Stone and Fire. These are the Earth and Fire apparitions, and a lot of these involve attacking. The vessel spell is called Earth's Bile. Within 30 feet, you create a 10-foot burst of lava and magma, causing fire damage, bludgeoning damage, and persistent fire damage. So that's a total of 2d4 damage plus 1 persistent damage. This scales up as you level up, of course. And every time you sustain it, you get to make that same attack over and over again. Next is the Vanguard of Roaring Waters. Their vessel spell is River Carving Mountains. This gives you a plus 10-foot status bonus to your speed. And when you cast it, and every time you sustain it, you get to stride up to your speed and fill each square you walk through with the lingering energy of a coursing river, turning it into difficult terrain until the start of your next turn. This works with all movement speed types, including flying. The last apparition is the Witness to Ancient Battles, apparitions that are born from a big battlefield where there was a lot of death. The vessel spell is the embodiment of battle. Remember that animists are only proficient with simple weapons. This gives you proficiency in all martial weapons during its duration, and you get a plus 1 status bonus to attack and damage rolls, and you get the reactive strike reaction that fighters get at level 1. Your bonus increases to plus 2 at 7th level and plus 3 at 13th level. Now, this sounds awesome that you can be a fighter just by taking up the spell, but remember that your proficiency progression in weapon fighting is similar to that of a wizard. You become an expert at 11th level, and it doesn't get better than that. And from my analysis, I would say that your attack bonuses are roughly like that of a martial, a non-fighter, non-gunslinger martial. That's if you're investing in a weapon attribute like strength or dexterity. Note that the status bonus does not stack with other status bonuses like that from Courageous Anthem from the Bard or the Bless spell. The downsides of this is that you have to sustain it every turn. There's no free attack with it, and you get a -2 status penalty to your spellcasting attack modifiers and spell DCs. Alright, the last part before my final thoughts that I'll cover are the Animist feats, and this will not be exhaustive. What's really unique about the Animist was already conveyed by what I've covered. However, there are some standouts that I'm going to point out here. Also, my time is limited, and these videos have been taking a long time to make. First, we see feats that are available to other spellcasters, but modified to reflect that you have spirits. Instead of reach spell, spending an action to increase the range of a spell by 30 feet, we have grasping spirits spell. It has the exact same effect. You have to do this one action thing right before you cast the spell that you want to affect. And the target of your spell must do a fortitude saving throw or get pulled 30 feet towards you. Now, notably, despite the flavor text, it says a creature. So you can actually pull an ally towards you if you want. At the same time, this is different from the reach spell feat other casters get, because you can only use this once per 10 minutes. Another feat that resembles feats that other spellcasters get is Apparitions Quickening. A lot of spellcasters can choose Quicken spell that lets you once a day cast a spell that's at least 2 spell ranks lower than your highest spell rank and cast it with 1 fewer action. This one is no longer limited to once per day, it's once per round. However, the cost is great. When you use this feat and cast a 1-action fireball, for instance, you disperse that apparition for the day. And I have not gone over dispersal. Basically, that apparition becomes unavailable until your next daily preparations, thus shrinking your spell repertoire for your apparition spell slots that day, and your access to their vessel spell and their lore skills. You cannot disperse your only apparition. So you theoretically can do Quicken spell, quote unquote, 3 times a day when you become 15th level and have 4 apparitions you can attune to. However, that is obviously very costly. Alright, so let's highlight some more feats starting from the low levels. At level 2, there's Embodiment of the Balance. It lets you add heal and harm to your apparition spell repertoire. None of the apparitions offer these spells to begin with, and since you don't have many prepared spell slots, and because healing is very important to many parties, this can give you more freedom with those spell slots. At level 6, there are several feats available to you with the Wandering trait, and I just wanted to look at all of them to demonstrate the decision space that faces you every morning. 3 of these 5 feats say that you must have an attuned apparition that grants one of the 2 listed skills. However, remember that you can change your attuned apparitions every morning, so you essentially can access all 5. Let's look at the generic ones. There's Apparition Stabilization. This is like steady spellcasting that other spellcasters can get. When your spell casting would be disrupted, you get a DC 15 flat check to ignore the disruption. But this is strictly better than all of those, because if you have 3 apparitions attuned, that lowers the DC to 13. If you have 4 apparitions attuned, you can lower it to 10. The other one you can take regardless of your apparitions on a given day is Medium's Awareness, which gives you a +2 status bonus to Seeking and to using Perception for your initiative roll. And this increases to +3 and +4 at higher levels. Blazing Spirit requires you to take certain apparitions, and it is a reaction that when a creature damages you with a melee attack, you gain resistance to the damage equal to your level. They take fire damage and are set on fire, no saving throw. You can do this once per 10 minutes. Grudge Strike lets you do additional vitality or void damage, 2d6 to be exact, against a foe. It costs 2 actions to make this strike, however. The last one's Roaring Heart. 2 actions to strike twice, and at any point during this movement, you can shove up to 2 creatures. And when you finish doing it, everyone within 30 feet who is your ally gets temporary hit points inspired by your act, if you successfully shoved somebody. You get those temporary hit points also. They last until the start of your next turn. Next is a level 12 feat that stood out to me, Whispers of Warning. As a reaction, if you would be critically hit, you force a reroll, and they have to use the lower result. Being able to negate critical hits and possibly turn them into misses seems stronger than the Fortification rune, a high-level armor rune in the game, but you can only use it once every 10 minutes. Next is a level 18 feat called Spirit's Sacrifice, the ultimate life insurance policy. If you would die, you sacrifice a spirit and they disperse until your next daily preparations. You also regain hit points, so if you were unconscious, you are now conscious again. There are 2 level 20 feats, and one gives you a bonus 10th rank spell slot. Strong, but boring. The other one is Eternal Guide. You get to assign a settlement that has at least 100 people. Whenever you die and are not returned to life within 24 hours, you are reformed in the settlement, either as yourself or passing on your abilities to a new inheritor. If you choose your original form, you are restored to youthful health and vigor, so you're effectively immune to dying from old age. If you choose an inheritor, they gain all of your abilities. It could be an inheritor of a different ancestry, in which case they retrain all of their ancestry abilities and any feats that depended on those. There's no limit to how many times you can use this. However, if you rebirth in this fashion and you die again within 1 week, your soul passes on. Now, I don't think that happens immediately. That would kind of suck. I think the way I read it, you still have that 24-hour window before you would reform in your community or settlement. The last thing I'll look at is the Animist archetype. It is pretty basic. It's very much like the cleric archetype, in fact. It gives you divine cantrips and access to divine spellcasting, as well as the usual ability to gain class feats from this class. However, unlike the cleric dedication, you get to attune to one apparition, which gives you access to the lore skills from that apparition. You can also additionally change your apparition with 1 day of downtime. You can never get more apparitions than one. As far as I can tell, you cannot get a vessel spell from an apparition. You don't have a spontaneous spellcasting pool either. The spells that the apparitions normally would give a base animist are additional spells that you can choose to prepare using your preparation slots. Like with the cleric archetype, you can access spells outside the divine tradition. The cleric archetype gives you the spells listed under your deity. But here, because you can change your apparition with a day of downtime, you theoretically have access to a wider variety of spells over time, as well as a wide variety of lore skills. Alright, on to final thoughts. The vessel spells are very important, not only because they're focus spells and you can cast them repeatedly throughout the day, but they also tend to be strong for what you normally can get from a focus spell. They're a good part of your power budget as an animist and are defining for you. And you can simultaneously change that vessel spell between a wide variety of choices. They're also strong because they're only one action, but their action economy also is a burden. They only require one action to start, but you need an action every subsequent turn to sustain it and not cut off your benefit from that focus point you spent on it. It means there's more weight in deciding what your vessel spell will be, and in the moment deciding to cast it and invest in its future. It does mean, too, that there's an action tax issue with it, particularly if you have only one focus point, in which case when you cast your only focus point, you really don't want to lose it because you cannot replace it. If you're playing an animist, this kind of cries out taking an archetype that gives you another focus spell to increase your pool, or taking the feat Circle of Spirits. This feeling of a constrained action economy was one of my concerns and my feedback during the playtest. And it appears like they doubled down on it essentially, because there used to be a feat in the playtest, that a level 2 feat, that allowed you to sustain while simultaneously leaping or something like that. That's now folded into one of the Animist subclasses and is not available until level 9. I'm not sure what to think about that given my limited experience, and I don't know how the Animist performs next to other classes. The vessel spell is quite powerful anyway, so maybe it's a wash. Another concern I raised during the playtest was the complexity involved. They've nearly doubled the number of apparitions you can choose from the playtest, which is bog standard for Paizo. They put out more options compared to their playtest version. So there's that to sift through, and each has its own spell lists and lore skills and avatar form and vessel spell. But also, when you get to higher and higher level, you're just going to have more spells to have access to. For example, if you're a 17th level character, you get to attune to 4 apparitions. And each apparition will add 10 spells to your repertoire. Add to this the fact that your prepared spells can be different every day. And you have 4 potential vessel spells that you may want to employ at different times that you can freely switch between by refocusing. Add on top of all of this the fact that you are likely going to have wandering feats that let you effectively retrain them in the morning with other wandering feats. This gives you a lot of potential options to choose from. However, the upside is that you are incredibly versatile. As we see through the apparitions, you can lean into very different roles that are usually inhabited by other classes, like being a weapon fighter, or being a healer, or being an AoE attacker, based on the apparition decisions you choose that day. You can also have multiple apparitions that allow you to change these roles, change your vessel spell from combat to combat. Versatility is its own form of optimization. It has greater power than what you can measure at any given moment in time, if that were even possible, because of its ability to pivot easily. A high-level Animist can, in the same battle with their 3 focus points, do weapon fighting in one part of the battle, then switch to an area attack if the fight changes, and then switch to a healing spell if the battle goes south. And each of these vessel spells, if you chose correctly, pays off in dividends. They're stronger than the usual focus spell. You get to benefit from them up to 10 rounds. Again, because of my limited experience, I can't really pass judgment or say that this is a strong class or a weak class. All I can do at this point is point out what I observe is unique and distinct and cool about it. So that's it. This has been my video on the Animist. My next video will be on the other new class, the Exemplar, the rare class that has a divine spark. I'll then follow that up with the new class archetypes in this book that are the spiritual successors of popular classes from 1st edition Pathfinder, including the Blood Rager and the Inquisitor. Subscribe and ring the bell to get notified. Also, these videos are up on my Patreon, and if you're watching this after it goes public, you can watch those next videos right now. So yeah, support my Patreon. Also join my Discord. I hang out there a lot. We talk Pathfinder 2e and other gaming. And if you want to play Pathfinder 2e, you can join our drop-in, drop-out organized play system called Endless Tale Tavern. So that's it. I've been Ronald the Rules Lawyer. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time.